For 10 years, Kanye West was untouchable, a creative genius who bent reality to his will through beats, bars, and pure audacity. November 19th, 2016, the St. Pablo Tour, Sacramento. That was the night everything changed. The night the music industry witnessed something that wasn't supposed to exist. I was there. I worked that show. And what I saw when Kanye stopped mid-song wasn't a breakdown. It was something else. Something that made him run off stage like he was being chased by demons. Because maybe he was. The media called it exhaustion. His publicists blamed the pressures of fame. The insurance companies filed it under artist breakdown. But I know what really happened that night. I was plugged into every frequency, every channel, every whisper of sound that moved through that arena. And what I heard through those monitors wasn't mental illness. It was something ancient, something hungry, something that had been feeding off the music industry for decades. If you keep listening, you'll understand why I quit touring after Sacramento, why I moved to a small town in Oregon where the only sounds are wind through trees and water over rocks, and why, even now, 3 years later, I still hear that voice calling my name through every speaker, every headphone, every device that can carry sound. Because once they know you can hear them, they never stop trying to reach you. When I started as a sound engineer 15 years ago, I thought I understood music. Frequencies, wavelengths, the physics of how sound moves through space and time. I worked small venues first, learning the craft on indie bands and local acts who paid in exposure and leftover pizza. But I was good, really good. I had what my mentor called golden ears, the ability to hear things in a mix that others missed. Subtle harmonics, buried frequencies, the spaces between notes where the real magic lived. That gift is what got me noticed, what got me called up to work bigger acts, better venues, more prestigious tours. By 2010, I was mixing for Grammy winners. By 2015, I was getting calls from A-list management companies. When Kanye's team reached out about the St. Pablo tour, I thought I'd finally made it to the top of my profession. I should have known something was wrong from the first phone call. It came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Not exactly business hours, even in the music industry. The voice on the other end was professional but strained, like someone trying very hard to sound normal. "We need someone with your specific skill set," the caller said. "Someone who can hear nuances." I asked what kind of nuances. There was a long pause, too long. "The kind most people miss," he finally said. "Kanye's very particular about his sound, very sensitive to interference." The pay was triple what I usually made. The contract was for the entire tour, 43 dates across North America. All expenses paid, plus a bonus that would let me buy the studio I'd been dreaming about for years. I signed without reading the fine print. That was my first mistake. The St. Pablo tour wasn't like anything I'd worked before. Most tours start with extensive rehearsals, weeks of fine-tuning every element until the show becomes a well-oiled machine. But this felt rushed, frantic, like we were racing against some invisible deadline that nobody wanted to acknowledge. Kanye himself was different from what I expected. The public knew him as confident to the point of arrogance, someone who spoke his mind regardless of consequences. But in rehearsal, he was cautious, always listening, always checking corners and shadows like he expected something to emerge from them. The first strange thing I noticed was the sound check schedule. Every venue, without exception, Kanye insisted on testing his levels at 3 a.m. Not 3 p.m. when the acoustic properties would be similar to showtime, 3 in the morning when the venue was empty except for a skeleton crew and the kind of silence that made you hyper-aware of every small sound. "Better acoustics," his tour manager explained when I asked. "Less interference from outside noise." But that didn't make sense. Most arenas are designed to minimize external interference regardless of the time. And the acoustics at 3 a.m., with no crowd to absorb the sound, would be completely different from a packed venue. It was like rehearsing for a different show entirely. During those late-night sessions, I started noticing things that didn't add up. Equipment readings that fluctuated without any input changes. Frequencies showing up on my spectrum analyzer that weren't coming from any instrument on stage. And the way Kanye moved during these sessions, not like someone rehearsing, but like someone trying to avoid something he couldn't see. The first time I heard the voice, I thought it was bleed through from another channel. Sometimes radio frequencies can get picked up by audio equipment, especially in large venues with complex electrical systems. But when I isolated each channel, checking for interference, the voice wasn't coming from any of them. It was coming from everywhere at once. Low, barely audible, harmonizing with Kanye's vocals in a way that made the hair on my arms stand up. I pulled off my headphones to listen with my natural ears. Nothing. Just Kanye's voice echoing through the empty arena. But the moment I put the headphones back on, there it was again. Clear and present, like someone standing right next to him, singing along. I mentioned it to Jake, the monitor engineer who'd been working with Kanye for 3 years. He gave me a look I couldn't quite read. Not confusion, more like resignation. "You're hearing it too now," he said quietly. Took longer than usual. Hearing what? The thing that's been following him around. Started about 2 years ago, right after he released Yeezus. Thought it would go away after that album cycle ended, but it just got stronger. I thought he was messing with me, hazing the new guy with some elaborate practical joke, but Jake wasn't laughing. His hands were shaking as he adjusted the monitor levels, and he kept glancing over his shoulder like something might be watching. "What kind of thing?" I asked. Jake was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Something that wants to be heard." The tour officially started in San Jose. 18,000 screaming fans, perfect sound, flawless performance. For 2 hours, Kanye was everything his reputation promised: magnetic, brilliant, untouchable. But I could hear it underneath the whole time, that presence, growing stronger with each song, feeding off the crowd's energy. During Power, something shifted. The bass frequencies on my board started spiking in patterns that didn't match what the band was playing. When I tried to compensate, the board fought back. Literally fought back. Faders moving on their own, EQ knobs turning without anyone touching them. I looked around to see if anyone else noticed, but the rest of the crew was focused on their own responsibilities. That's when I realized I might be the only one who could see it happening. After the show, I cornered Jake in the equipment bay. "What's really going on here?" He looked around to make sure we were alone, then pulled out his phone and showed me a video. Grainy footage from what looked like a security camera, timestamp showing 3 months earlier. Kanye on stage, performing alone in an empty venue. But in the video, there were shadows moving behind him. Shadows that didn't match any lighting equipment. Venue security sent this to management after they found it on their system, Jake said. No one remembers recording it. No one was even in the building that night except Kanye. I watched the video 3 times. Each time the shadows became clearer, more defined. By the 3rd viewing, I could swear they were dancing. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because you're going to start seeing things, hearing things, and when it gets bad, really bad, you'll need to know you're not losing your mind." The next few shows passed without major incident, but the signs were getting stronger. During sound checks, my equipment would pick up conversations that weren't happening. Snippets of dialogue in languages I didn't recognize coming from empty seats in the arena. I started recording everything, building a digital archive of the impossible. Phoenix was where it escalated. During flashing lights, I caught a clear recording of someone singing harmony with Kanye. Not a backing vocalist. We didn't have any that night. The voice was coming through his personal monitor feed, meaning whatever was singing was standing right next to him on stage. But the stage was empty, except for Kanye. I isolated the track and ran it through every filter I had. The voice was definitely human, definitely male, but there was something wrong with the frequencies. They were too low in some places, too high in others. Like someone had taken a normal human voice and stretched it beyond its natural range. After the show, I found Kanye sitting alone in his dressing room, staring at his reflection in the mirror. But he wasn't looking at himself. He was looking at something behind his reflection, something I couldn't see. "You hear it too," he said without turning around. It wasn't a question. "Hear what?" "The thing that's been writing my music." I felt cold suddenly. "What do you mean?" He finally turned to face me. His eyes were bloodshot, exhausted in a way that sleep couldn't fix. "You think the life of Pablo was all me? You think these new songs just come from nowhere?" "I don't understand." Neither did I. Not at first. Thought it was just inspiration, you know? Ideas flowing so fast I could barely keep up. But inspiration doesn't talk back. Inspiration doesn't make demands. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. It started small. Whispers in the studio, usually when I was working alone late at night. Suggestions for melodies, for lyrics. And the suggestions were good. Better than good. They were perfect. "Kanye, maybe you should talk to someone." "I tried." His voice was sharp now, defensive. "You think I didn't try?" Therapists, doctors, psychiatrists. They all said the same thing. Stress, overwork, creative pressure. Gave me pills that made everything fuzzy but didn't make the voice stop. "What voice?" He turned back to me, and for a moment I saw genuine fear in his eyes. The one that's been helping me write hits for 2 years. The one that wants something in return. Denver was worse. During Famous, the presence became visible. Not to the audience. They were too far away, too caught up in the energy of the performance. But through the monitors, through the cameras we used for the video screens, I could see it. A shadow that moved independently of any light source, sometimes standing behind Kanye, sometimes in front of him, always swaying to rhythms that were slightly off from the music. I started drinking. Not heavily, just enough to dull the edge of what I was experiencing. Enough to convince myself that the stress was getting to me, that Jake's warnings had planted suggestions in my mind. But the alcohol didn't make the shadows disappear. If anything, it made them clearer. During a sound check in Oklahoma City, the shadow spoke directly to me. I was adjusting levels for stronger when my headphones filled with a voice that wasn't coming from any microphone on stage. Low, patient, almost amused. "You're very observant," it said. I yanked the headphones off so fast, the cord snapped. But the voice continued, now coming from the arena's sound system itself. "Most of the crew can't hear me at all. Even the ones who can hear usually can't see. You're special." I looked around frantically. The rest of the crew was going about their business, apparently hearing nothing unusual. On stage, Kanye had stopped mid-song and was staring directly at the sound booth where I stood. "Don't fight it," the voice continued. "Fighting only makes it harder. Ask your friend Jake." That night, I cornered Jake again. "How long have you been hearing it?" "Since the second show in San Jose, but it didn't start talking to me directly until we hit Las Vegas." "What does it want?" Jake was quiet for a long time. When he finally answered, his voice was hollow. "To be famous, to be heard by millions, to have its voice carried across the world through our sound systems. And Kanye? Kanye's just the vessel, the most visible, most influential vessel it could find. But it's not just using him, it's learning from him, getting stronger." I started noticing other artists on the radio who had that same quality in their voices. That slightly off frequency that made your skin crawl if you listened closely enough. The presence wasn't limited to Kanye, it was spreading. Las Vegas was when everything started falling apart. Kanye's performance became erratic, unpredictable. He'd stop mid-verse and argue with empty air. During Black Skinhead, he had a full conversation with someone the audience couldn't see, defending his choices, pleading for more time. "I kept my end of the deal," he said into the microphone, apparently forgetting thousands of people were listening. "The albums hit #1. The tours sold out. What more do you want?" The response came through every speaker in the venue, clear enough for the audience to hear. A voice that wasn't Kanye's, wasn't human, but somehow familiar. Everything. The crowd went wild, thinking it was part of the show, but I could see Kanye's face. the terror, the realization that his private nightmare had just become public. After Vegas, the tour took on a desperate quality. Kanye's team started limiting access to sound checks. They brought in their own security, people who wouldn't ask questions about strange noises or moving shadows. But they couldn't keep me out. I was essential to the show's technical operation. That's when I started documenting everything. Audio recordings, video footage, detailed logs of every anomaly. I thought maybe if I could prove what was happening, someone would believe me. Someone would help. Portland was the worst yet. During Ultralight Beam, the presence took partial control of Kanye's voice. I could hear it happening in real time, his natural vocal patterns being overwritten by something else. The audience heard a flawless performance, but through my monitors, I could hear Kanye struggling, fighting for control of his own throat. "Help me," he whispered during what should have been an instrumental break. The audience probably thought it was artistic expression, but I could see him looking directly at the sound booth, directly at me, mouthing the words again. "Help me, I tried. God help me, I tried." I started introducing interference into the sound system, hoping to disrupt whatever connection the presence had established. White noise, feedback, anything to break the signal. But every time I tried, the presence got stronger, more aggressive. Equipment started failing in dangerous ways. Amplifiers overheating, cables shorting out in showers of sparks. During one particularly bad episode in Seattle, a monitor speaker exploded just feet from where Kanye was standing. The official explanation was a power surge, but I'd been watching the levels. Everything was normal until the moment I tried to interfere. That's when I realized the presence didn't just want to be heard. It wanted to protect itself, and it was willing to hurt people to do it. Sacramento was supposed to be show 37 of 43. 3 more weeks, and the tour would be over. I'd started counting down the days, hoping that maybe when the tour ended, the presence would move on to someone else, find a new vessel, leave Kanye alone. But by then, I understood that it wasn't going to let him go, not willingly. The venue felt wrong from the moment we started load-in. The Golden One Center had only been open for a few months, but it already felt ancient, haunted, like whatever had been following Kanye had called this place home long before we arrived. During the afternoon sound check, I detected frequencies that weren't coming from our equipment, subsonic tones that seemed to emerge from the building itself. When I traced them, they led to the basement levels, storage areas that supposedly hadn't been accessed since construction ended. I should have left it alone, should have focused on my job and gotten through one more show. But something compelled me to investigate. Maybe it was professional curiosity. Maybe it was the same force that had been manipulating all of us. I found the source in a storage room 3 levels down. Speakers, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, arranged in perfect geometric patterns and connected to power sources I couldn't identify. They were active, humming with energy, broadcasting those subsonic frequencies up through the building structure. But the speakers were old, decades old. Some of them looked like they'd been there since before the building was even planned. That's when I understood that Sacramento wasn't just another stop on the tour. It was a destination, a place the presence had been preparing for years. I ran back to the sound booth and tried to warn Jake, tried to convince him we needed to cancel the show. But when I got there, Jake was gone. His equipment was still running, still monitoring levels, but his chair was empty. I asked the other techs where he'd gone. None of them remembered seeing him leave. None of them remembered him being there at all. That's when I knew we were in real danger. The presence wasn't just feeding off the performances anymore. It was starting to erase people, starting to rewrite reality itself. Kanye arrived for the show 3 hours early, which was unprecedented. Usually, he'd show up right before going on stage, all energy and confidence. But that night, he looked like a man walking to his execution. His security team was nervous, constantly checking their phones, constantly looking over their shoulders. "We need to cancel," I told his tour manager. "Cancel? Are you insane? Do you know how much money we'll lose? Do you know what's been happening on this tour? The things I've been recording?" He looked at me like I was having a breakdown. I think you need to take a step back, maybe see someone when we get back to LA. I tried to show him the recordings, the evidence I'd been collecting, but when I pulled out my phone, the files were gone. Weeks of documentation vanished. My backup drives were empty. Even the cloud storage accounts showed no trace of what I'd uploaded. The presence had been watching, learning, protecting itself. By showtime, I was barely functional. My hands shook as I operated the mixing board. Every shadow looked like it was moving. Every reflected surface seemed to show something that wasn't really there. But I stayed at my post because I knew that if I abandoned Kanye that night, no one would be there to witness what happened. The show started normally. Father Stretch My Hands thundered through the arena, and for the first few songs, everything seemed fine. Kanye was magnetic, commanding, every inch the superstar his fans had paid to see. But I could hear the presence growing stronger with each track, more confident, more in control. During Flashing Lights, Kanye's movements became erratic. Not the calculated chaos of his usual performance style, but genuine confusion, like he was fighting for control of his own body. Through my headphones, I could hear him having a conversation with someone, but there was no one else on stage. "Not yet," he whispered into the mic during an instrumental break. "I need more time." The response came through clear as day, audible to anyone paying attention. "Time is over." That's when Kanye started losing the fight. During Black Skinhead, his voice would cut out mid-word, replaced by something deeper, older, hungrier. The crowd probably thought it was a vocal effect, but I could see the terror in his eyes. He was being overwritten in real time. The presence was no longer content to influence, it wanted complete control. Famous was where everything fell apart. Kanye got halfway through the first verse and stopped, just stopped. He stood there, swaying slightly, looking out at the crowd like he was seeing them for the first time. When he finally spoke, it wasn't his voice anymore. "Y'all came to see a show, right?" The words were Kanye's, but the inflection was wrong. The rhythm was off. Something else was speaking through him. The arena fell silent. 17,000 people sensing that something was wrong, but not understanding what. Through my monitors, I could hear what the audience couldn't. Applause. Slow, deliberate clapping coming from the empty spaces behind the stage. But there was no one there. Nothing but shadows and lights. Kanye turned toward the sound, and I'll never forget the expression on his face. Pure terror. Like he was finally seeing what had been using him, what had been feeding off him for 2 years. "I can't," he said into the microphone. His voice was shaking now, fully his own again, but barely holding together. "I can't do this anymore." He looked directly at me then, standing in the sound booth. Our eyes met across the arena, and in that moment, I understood what he was asking. Not for rescue, it was too late for that, but for witness, for someone to remember what really happened. He dropped the microphone and walked off stage. The crowd erupted, confusion, anger, demands for explanations, but I was focused on my monitors, on the frequencies that were still active even though Kanye was gone. The presence wasn't finished. It was angry, frustrated, hungry for the energy it had been building toward all night. That's when I heard Kanye backstage, his voice carrying through the open channels. He was pleading with something, bargaining with something. "I gave you everything," he said. 2 years of my life, my reputation, my sanity. What more do you want?" The response made my blood freeze. "I want them to see. I want them to know who really makes the music." I pulled off my headphones and ran, through the backstage corridors, past confused security guards, past devastated fans, out into the Sacramento night. I didn't stop running until I reached my hotel, and then I kept packing and drove straight through to Oregon. I haven't worked a concert since that night. Haven't even been to one as a fan. Because once you hear what I heard, once you know what's really behind the music, you can't unknow it. Kanye was hospitalized for exhaustion. The rest of the tour was canceled. The official story blamed the pressures of fame, creative burnout, the toll of constant performing. The media ate it up. Another cautionary tale about the price of genius. But I know what really happened. Kanye didn't have a breakdown. He was consumed, used up. The presence had fed off him until there was nothing left to take, and then it moved on. I've followed his career since Sacramento. Every album, every interview, every public appearance. And I can hear it. The thing is still there, still using him, but it's different now. Weaker. Like, it burned through too much of him too fast and damaged its own vessel. But it's learning, getting better at hiding, finding new hosts. I hear it in other artists now. That same frequency signature, that same wrongness in the harmonies. The presence isn't limited to one person anymore. It's spreading through the industry like a virus made of sound. Sometimes I think about going public, writing a book, making a documentary, finding some way to warn people. But who would believe me? And what good would it do? The presence has learned to cover its tracks, to erase evidence, to silence anyone who gets too close to the truth. Jake never turned up. Not in Sacramento, not anywhere else. It's like he just stopped existing the moment he tried to warn me. The other crew members I've tracked down don't remember him at all. Don't remember the strange things that happened on that tour. Their memories have been edited. I'm probably the only one left who remembers what really happened. The only witness to what the music industry has become. A feeding ground for something that was old when humans first learned to make rhythmic sounds. Late at night, when I'm alone in my cabin in Oregon, I still hear it calling. Through the radio, through my phone, through any device capable of carrying sound. It knows I remember. Knows I could expose it if I found the right platform, the right audience. But it also knows I'm afraid. Afraid of what it might do to silence me. Afraid of ending up like Jake, erased from existence, forgotten by everyone who ever knew me. So I stay quiet. I live small. I try not to listen too closely to the music that drifts through the valley on clear nights. But sometimes, when the wind is just right, I hear Kanye's voice carried on the breeze. Not the confident rapper the world knows, but the terrified man from that dressing room in Phoenix. "Help me," he whispers. "It's still here. It's still using me." And I close my windows and turn up the white noise machine and try to pretend I can't hear what the music industry has become. Try to pretend that every song on every radio isn't carrying something hungry. Something that wants to be heard by millions. Something that's still growing stronger. If you're reading this, if you made it this far, then maybe you can hear it too. That wrongness in the frequencies, that hunger in the harmonies. Maybe you're starting to understand that the music you love might not be entirely human. And if you are hearing it, then I'm sorry. Because once they know you can hear them, they never stop trying to reach you. Welcome to the frequency. Try not to listen too closely. You never know who might be listening back.